If you're an Aquarius and someone has been on your mind more than usual lately, this message is not random. They haven't moved on. Not in the way you think. There is a past decision they made, a moment where they chose silence, distance, or another path, and now, that choice is echoing back to them. They think about you in quiet moments, at night, in between conversations, in the spaces where truth was never spoken. If this resonates, comment "I received this message." Because what you're about to hear isn't just about missing someone, it's about the price of not choosing what the heart already knew. And this is only the beginning of a much deeper story. I want you to imagine this moment as just the two of us. No noise, no rush. Just you, Aquarius, and this quiet space where honesty can finally breathe. What happened between you and them wasn't a clean ending. You already know that. It never felt like love ran out. It felt more like time moved faster than the heart could keep up. There was distance. Real distance, miles, schedules, life pulling in opposite directions. But there was also timing. And timing can be cruel in a way words never fully explain. You didn't slowly fade from each other. You were pulled apart by responsibilities, by opportunities that looked practical on the surface, by choices that felt necessary in the moment, even if they didn't feel right. There was a time when seeing each other didn't require planning. You were just there, in the same places, the same routines, the same small moments that didn't seem important until they were gone. And when one of you had to leave, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, almost reasonable. That's what makes it hurt in a different way. Because no one stopped loving. No one woke up one day and decided, this doesn't matter anymore. Instead, life made the decision feel unavoidable. And you both went along with it. Even though something inside you resisted. You especially felt it. Aquarius always does. You understand logic. You understand growth. You understand that sometimes people have to choose paths that make sense on paper, but you also feel the cost. Deeply, even when you don't show it. What stayed behind wasn't anger, it was unfinished energy. Moments that never reached their full expression. Words that didn't get a chance to land. And somewhere along the way, they told themselves the separation meant it had to be over. That distance was proof. That circumstances had spoken for the heart. But here's the quiet truth. Distance doesn't erase connection. It only reveals how real it was. They didn't leave because they stopped caring. They left because they believed they had no other choice. Because they thought love could wait, or survive silence, or make sense later. And now, time has passed. Enough to show them what that choice actually cost. You may not hear from them, you may not see them, but their mind keeps returning to the same place. The moment before everything changed. The moment they walked away thinking they would be fine. Aquarius, if this is landing softly but clearly in your chest, that's not coincidence. That's recognition. And as we stay here for a breath longer, I want you to notice something. Not what they lost, but what you learned about yourself in the space they left behind. Because this story isn't done revealing its meaning yet. Stay with me for a moment. Right here. Because what I'm about to say isn't loud. It doesn't knock. It arrives the way certain thoughts do late at night. Soft. Persistent. They think about you more than they admit. More than they would ever say out loud. Not in a dramatic way. Not constantly checking a phone or replaying old messages. It's quieter than that. Deeper. You show up in the in-between moments. When their day finally slows down. When the room goes still. When no one is asking anything from them. You appear in places you once shared. A street they pass without thinking. A cafe that smells familiar. A song they didn't choose, but didn't skip either. Sometimes it's not even a clear memory. Just a feeling. A sense that something is missing. That someone should be there. And for a brief second, they almost reach for you. Almost. They see people who remind them of you. Not your face exactly, but your energy. The way you listened. The way you saw things differently. The way conversations felt less heavy when you were around. That's the part they didn't expect to carry with them. They told themselves distance would create space. Clarity. Closure. Instead, it created echoes. They hear your voice in moments of decision. They wonder what you would say. How you would look at the situation. What perspective you would offer that no one else quite can. Aquarius, you leave that kind of imprint. Even when you're gone, you're not replaceable. They don't talk about this with anyone. They keep it contained, packaged as nostalgia, as something harmless. But it isn't harmless. It's persistent. It lingers. There are moments when they feel an unexpected pull. A pause in the middle of a busy day. A thought that interrupts whatever they were doing. It's that quiet sentence in their mind. This should feel better than it does. Why doesn't it feel better? And without realizing it, they trace that feeling back to you. Not because you completed them, but because with you, they felt more like themselves. You didn't demand space. You offered it. You didn't try to fix them. You understood them. That's not easy to forget. And maybe you felt this too. Out of nowhere. a heaviness, a memory that arrives without warning. That's not imagination, that's resonance. Two people who didn't get to finish a sentence still share the silence it left behind. But here's what matters most. You were real to them. You still are. Not as a fantasy, not as regret alone, but as a reminder of something true they haven't found again. And as this realization quietly settles in them, something begins to shift, because thinking about you is no longer just memory. It becomes reflection, questioning, a reckoning with the choice they once made. And that awareness has its own weight. Let me slow this down with you, because this part carries weight. The kind you don't notice at first, but it settles in quietly and stays. What they chose back then wasn't a single moment. It was a series of small decisions. Each one seemed reasonable, defensible, even mature. Leave now, say nothing, take the opportunity. Trust that time will sort out the rest. At the time, it felt like forward movement, like doing the responsible thing, like choosing stability over uncertainty. But choices don't disappear once they're made. They age, gather meaning. They wait. And now, that decision lives with them. Not loudly, not dramatically. It shows up in subtler ways. In the hesitation before committing to anything new. In the restless feeling that something still isn't aligned. In the sense of standing at a crossroads that no longer exists. They replay that moment more often than they admit. Not because they want to punish themselves, but because something inside them keeps asking the same question. Was that really the only option? They tell themselves they did what they had to do, that anyone in their position would have done the same. And maybe that's true. But truth has layers. And deeper down, there's another voice, quieter, more honest. That voice wonders what might have happened if they had stayed, if they had spoken, if they had chosen differently, even when it felt risky. Now they feel suspended between two directions. Going back feels impossible. Too much time, too many changes, too many unanswered questions. Moving forward doesn't feel clean either. Every new beginning feels unfinished. Like starting a sentence they can't quite finish. So they remain in this strange in-between space, not fully present where they are, not able to return to where they were. Aquarius, you understand this kind of limbo. You live in the future, but you feel the past. You know what it's like to carry a decision that made sense intellectually but never settled emotionally. They are learning that avoiding discomfort doesn't erase it. It just stretches it across time. And the longer they sit with this choice, the more they realize that the real cost wasn't losing you. It was losing clarity, momentum, trust in their own instincts. They thought choosing safety would bring peace. Instead, it brought questions. And those questions don't demand answers all at once. They surface slowly, in moments of stillness, in late nights, in the pause before sleep. You may feel this energy too, a sense that something unresolved is circling closer, not to disrupt your life, but to be acknowledged. Because when a decision isn't honored for what it truly was, it keeps asking to be understood, not rewritten, not fixed, just seen clearly. And as that realization begins to settle in them, something starts to loosen. Not resolution, not yet, but awareness. And awareness has a way of opening doors that once felt permanently closed. Let's stay right here together. Because this is where things turn quiet in a different way. Not the calm kind of quiet. The kind that keeps speaking long after no words were said. There was something they meant to tell you. Not perfectly, not eloquently, just honestly. A sentence that formed in their chest more than once. A message they typed, then erased. A moment when they felt the weight of it all rise up and thought, now is when I should speak. But they didn't. They told themselves it wasn't the right time. That waiting would be kinder. That silence would protect both of you from confusion, from pain, from making things harder than they already were. Silence can feel responsible when emotions are heavy. But silence doesn't dissolve truth. It stores it. And that unspoken truth didn't disappear. It stayed with them, looping, replaying. Sometimes it comes back like a memory, other times like a question that won't settle. What would have happened if I had just said it? They replay that moment differently each time. In one version, they speak. In another, you respond. In another, everything changes just enough to hurt a little more. They don't regret losing you the way people usually think of regret. This isn't about possession or control. It's about integrity. They regret not showing up as their full self when it mattered most. They regret letting fear speak louder than truth. They regret choosing disappearance over vulnerability. And the hardest part is this: they know you would have listened. Aquarius, you create that kind of space where honesty feels possible, where someone can be uncertain and still be accepted. That's what makes the silence echo. Because it wasn't forced, it was chosen, and now it follows them into quiet moments, late nights, long drives, the pause before sleep when defenses soften. They wonder if you ever knew, if you felt it anyway, if the absence of words carried its own message. You may have felt that too. That strange knowing without proof. That sense that something was held back, not because it didn't exist, but because it was too real. Silence can look like distance, but inside, it can be full of emotion with nowhere to go. They didn't lack feelings, they lacked courage in that moment. And time has a way of revealing that difference. What once felt like restraint now feels like avoidance. What once felt like patience now feels like loss. Yet even in this regret, there is something quietly human. A reminder that people don't always fail because they don't care. Sometimes they fail because they care too much and don't know how to hold it. As this understanding settles, the silence begins to change shape. It no longer feels empty. It starts to feel like something that wants to be acknowledged, not rewritten, not justified, just understood. And that awareness creates a subtle shift, a soft pressure, a readiness for truth to move again. Not loudly, not all at once, just enough to remind the heart that some words still carry weight even after time has passed. Stay with me here, just a little longer, because this is the part they didn't see coming. Not when they left. Not when they chose distance and told themselves they would be fine. Walking away from you didn't bring relief. It didn't bring clarity. It didn't open the life they imagined. Instead, it left a quiet emptiness. The kind that doesn't show up right away. The kind that waits until everything else settles. At first, they kept moving. Busy days, new routines, different faces. Enough noise to avoid listening too closely. But happiness has a way of revealing itself honestly. It doesn't stay hidden forever. There were moments when they should have felt content. Moments that looked successful from the outside. Moments where they told themselves, this is what I chose, this is what I wanted. And yet something was missing. Not excitement, not passion, alignment. They realized they weren't unhappy because life was difficult. They were unhappy because life felt disconnected from who they really were. And slowly, quietly, the truth surfaced. Leaving you didn't free them. It cost them. Not in dramatic ways. Not in obvious losses. But in subtle ones. They lost the feeling of being seen without explanation. They lost the ease of conversation that didn't require performance. They lost the calm that comes from being understood even in silence. They didn't just miss you. They missed the version of themselves that existed with you. That realization carries weight. Because it forces a different kind of responsibility. They can't blame circumstances forever. They can't blame timing alone. At some point, they have to face the truth that they participated in their own loss. And that's a hard place to sit. There are nights when self-criticism creeps in quietly. When they replay moments not with longing but with regret. Not regret for loving you. Regret for not protecting what mattered. They begin to understand something deeper. Happiness isn't something you find later after everything makes sense. It's something you choose when it matters even when it feels inconvenient, and they didn't choose it. You may have sensed this shift. A change in energy. A feeling that something unresolved has turned inward on them. That's not punishment. That's awareness arriving. Aquarius, I want you to hear this clearly. Their unhappiness is not your responsibility. Their regret is not a measure of your worth. If anything, it reflects the value of what they let go of. You were not a detour. You were a place of truth. And while they are learning this through loss, you are learning something else. That your presence mattered. That your love was real. That what you offered was not easily replaced. And as they sit with the cost of their choice, something begins to form beneath the regret. Not despair. Not self-pity. Understanding. The kind that comes when someone finally sees that happiness doesn't disappear on its own. It fades when it is neglected. And this realization quietly reshapes how they look at the past and at themselves. Because once someone recognizes what they truly lost, they can never unsee it. And that awareness moves with them into every thought that follows. Stay with me, right here. Because this is where their understanding sharpens, and where the ache becomes more precise. They have always known there was something different about you, even back then. Before distance. Before silence tried to explain things away. You carry warmth without needing attention. You create safety without control. People feel more like themselves around you. And they often do not realize why until later. They realized it slowly, not in one dramatic moment, but through absence. In rooms that felt colder than they should have. In conversations that sounded fine, but never quite reached the same depth. They noticed how rare it was to feel understood without having to translate themselves. How uncommon it was to feel accepted without being evaluated. That was you. And knowing this now hurts in a very specific way. Because they also know why they hesitated. Why they stepped back instead of stepping in. You felt too good, too steady, too real. They questioned whether they deserved that kind of presence. Whether they could meet you where you stood without disappointing you later. So they told themselves a quieter story. One that sounded practical, safer. That maybe you would be better off without them. That maybe letting go was the responsible choice. That maybe distance was kindness. but kindness that comes from fear always leaves a mark. Now, without you in their life, that story no longer holds. They see it clearly. You were not asking for perfection. You were offering connection. And the pain they feel now is not jealousy, not longing alone. It is recognition. Recognition of what they walked away from because they did not believe they were enough. Aquarius, this part matters. So listen gently. Their realization does not mean you were meant to wait. It does not mean you were meant to carry their doubt. It simply reflects the depth of what you brought into their life. You were not overwhelming. You were grounding. You were not demanding. You were present. And presence can be terrifying to someone who is unsure of their own worth. They miss the way you listened, the way you noticed subtle shifts, the way silence around you felt safe instead of empty. They miss being seen without being exposed. And with that awareness comes a quieter pain. The kind that does not ask to be fixed, only acknowledged. They understand now that losing you was not about timing alone. It was about self-belief. They did not leave because you lacked value. They left because they could not yet hold it. That understanding reshapes regret. It softens blame. It brings honesty where excuses used to live. And as this truth settles in them, it begins to change how they remember you. Not as someone they lost, but as someone who reflected a version of themselves they had not fully stepped into yet. Aquarius, if you feel this landing quietly inside you, let it. Not as validation, but as confirmation. You were never too much. You were simply real. And real things have weight. They leave impressions. They shape people long after they are gone. As this awareness continues to unfold, something begins to realign inside them and inside you. Because when truth is finally seen, it does not rush. It settles. Let's slow the world down for a moment. Just you and me here. Because this part is subtle. And subtle things are easy to miss if we rush past them. Even without words. Even without messages or calls. Something between you and them never fully disconnected. You might feel it when you least expect to. A sudden heaviness in your chest. A wave of emotion with no clear source. A dream that feels more real than memory. You wake up and it lingers, not as a picture, but as a feeling. That is connection. Not the kind that needs constant contact, but the kind that forms when two people recognize each other at a deeper level. They feel it too. Even if they would never describe it that way. Even if they explain it as coincidence or nostalgia. There are moments when they sense you without trying. In quiet rooms. In pauses between conversations. In the stillness right before sleep. They don't always attach your name to it. But the feeling is familiar, comforting, and unsettling at the same time, because it reminds them of something unresolved. You may notice it when your thoughts drift unexpectedly. When your heart softens for no obvious reason. When your body remembers what your mind has tried to move past. This doesn't mean you are stuck. It means something meaningful once passed through your life. True connections do not vanish on command. They change form. They evolve. But they leave a trace. Aquarius, you understand this better than most. You feel energy before you explain it. You sense patterns before they make logical sense. That is not weakness. That is awareness. Neither of you walked away untouched. Even silence carried weight. Even distance carried information. You both carry this connection differently. They hold it as reflection. You hold it as quiet knowing. And no one teaches us how to let go of something that still feels alive in some invisible way. There are days when it fades into the background. Days when life feels full again, grounded, present. And then there are moments when it returns gently, not to pull you backward, but to remind you of what depth feels like. That does not mean you are meant to go back. It means you were changed. No one truly leaves a connection like this without carrying something forward. A new standard, a deeper sense of truth, a clearer understanding of what matters. They carry it too, whether they admit it or not. That is why neither of you left lightly. Why neither of you simply forgot. Some bonds are not meant to last forever in form. They last in impact. They teach us how to recognize ourselves and how to recognize others. If you feel this connection now, do not question your strength. It is not holding you back. It is reminding you that you are capable of deep resonance, of meaningful presence, of being felt even in absence. And as this awareness settles into you, it brings something quieter than longing. Clarity, a sense that what was shared mattered, that it was real, and that real things leave echoes for a reason. Those echoes do not demand action. They invite understanding. And when understanding arrives, the heart naturally makes space for whatever is ready to arrive next. Let's take a breath together and stay right here, because this is where meaning quietly reveals itself. Not as a lesson, not as a rule, but as something lived. This story was never only about missing someone. It was about choice, and what happens when the heart knows something before courage catches up. They didn't choose against love, they chose away from discomfort, from uncertainty, from the risk of being fully seen. At the time, that choice felt intelligent, controlled, even mature. But the heart keeps its own record. When someone doesn't choose what they truly want, they don't escape the truth, they postpone it. And postponement has a cost. That cost shows up as restlessness, as a quiet dissatisfaction that no achievement can quite fix. As the sense of always being almost there but never fully present. They are living with that now, not as punishment, but as consequence. The difference matters. Because this isn't about blame, it's about responsibility. They are learning that silence is still a decision, that walking away is still a form of choosing, and that avoiding emotional risk does not protect the heart in the long run. Aquarius, this is where your role in the story shifts. You were never meant to carry their regret. You were meant to carry the insight. You understand something they are only beginning to see. That courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to speak even when your voice shakes. You feel deeply, but you also observe deeply, and that combination is rare. This experience has taught you how important it is to honor your inner truth early, to trust your emotional intelligence instead of dismissing it as inconvenient. You now know what happens when feelings are postponed instead of expressed. That knowledge is not heavy. It is clarifying. It shapes how you show up now, how you listen to yourself, how you recognize alignment instead of talking yourself out of it. For them, this decision will always mark a moment. A point where life quietly asked, "Are you brave enough?" and they were not ready to answer. For you, it marks something else. A deeper self-respect, a clearer sense of what you deserve, and a stronger relationship with your own truth. This is not about going back. It is about moving forward with awareness. And awareness is powerful. It softens the past without erasing it. It allows gratitude without attachment. You can hold the memory without being held by it. And as you stand here now, there is a quiet strength settling into you. The kind that does not rush. The kind that does not beg for clarity from others. You know now that what is meant for you will meet you in honesty, with presence, with courage, and you will recognize it not because it feels intense, but because it feels true. Let that understanding rest with you for a moment, like a calm night sky, wide clear. Because once truth is integrated, life begins responding differently, and whatever arrives next will not ask you to be smaller, or quieter, or braver than you already are. It will meet you exactly where you stand. Take a moment before you move on. Don't rush away just yet, because if you've stayed until now, this message wasn't meant to pass through you. It was meant to land. What you just listened to wasn't about chasing the past. It was about reclaiming your clarity, your voice, your power to choose differently. Aquarius, you were never meant to wait in silence. You were meant to recognize truth and walk with it. And here's the part that surprises most people. The moment you truly understand what this story gave you, the energy shifts. Not out there, but inside you. That's when things begin to realign. Not because someone comes back. Not because the past fixes itself. But because you no longer abandon yourself to keep the peace. That is healing. Quiet. Undeniable. If this message touched something real in you, let it be known. Leave a comment. Even a single word is enough. Stay connected by subscribing, not just to this channel, but to your own intuition. And most importantly, trust yourself. Because this journey isn't over. The story is still unfolding. And the next message is already finding its way to you. Until then, take this calm with you. You're not alone here. We're walking this path together.